Welcome, students, to today's Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to have you in our interactive biology classroom today. Seriously, grab your virtual lab coats because we are going on a microscopic safari. We're going to shrink ourselves down and journey directly inside the fundamental building blocks of all living things, cells. Whether you're looking at a towering oak tree outside your window or, your own reflection in the mirror, you are looking at billions and billions of these incredible microscopic machines. And today, we're going to unlock exactly how they work.
But before we zoom in, it's time to prime those brains. Let's kick things off with a quick Mind Activate challenge straight from our lesson material. I'm going to rattle off some words. You have about 30 seconds to lock them into your memory. Ready? Okay, we have nucleus, cell membrane, chloroplast, cell wall, cytoplasm, mitochondria, vacuole, ribosome, animal cell, plant cell, photosynthesis, and organelle. Try to remember as many of those as you possibly can. Don't worry if they sound a bit like an alien language right now. By the end of this explainer, you're going to be incredibly fluent in the language of cells. Just keep those terms floating in your mind as we move forward.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our agenda for today. 1. Welcome to biology class. 2. Meet the cell structures. 3. Unique plant cell features. And 4. Time for a pop quiz. Section 1. Welcome to biology class, the basics. Before we get into the intricate parts of a cell, we kind of need to understand the two major superfamilies that all cells fall into. Our source material highlights a really critical distinction: eukaryotic versus prokaryotic cells. Basically, the crucial point is that not all cells are built with the same level of complexity. Eukaryotic cells, those are the complex ones. These are your plant cells and your animal cells, literally the ones making up you, me, and every single plant you've ever seen. They have their genetic material, their DNA, neatly packaged away inside a distinct nucleus, and they're just packed with specialized subcellular structures. On the flip side, we have prokaryotic cells, like bacterial cells. These are generally much simpler, much smaller. They don't have that neat little nucleus to hold their DNA. For today's explainer, though, we're going to be focusing exclusively on the complex, highly organized world of eukaryotic cells.
Section 2. Meet the cell structures inside the animal cell.
It can be really tricky to draw cells accurately in 3D because they're complex, they're fluid, they're highly dynamic. So instead, in biology, cells are often drawn as 2D diagrams, just like a classic model of an animal cell. This helps us cleanly map out all the subcellular structures, which, by the way, is really just a fancy term for the tiny organs or organelles that live inside the cell. Notice that somewhat irregular blob-like shape? That's totally characteristic of an animal cell. It's flexible. Now let's identify the specific machinery working inside that boundary.
That 2D model is packed with specialized structures, and each one has a very specific, absolutely vital job. First up, filling up the cell, we have the cytoplasm. Think of this as a jelly-like substance. It's essentially the bustling factory floor where the chemical reactions of the cell take place. Next, floating in that jelly, we have the mitochondria. These are the powerhouses. The source tells us they provide energy for the cell's activities through a process called aerobic respiration. Literally, without them, the cell would have zero power to function. Then we have these tiny little dots you might see on diagrams, the ribosomes. This is where protein synthesis occurs. They're basically the cell's manufacturing machines, building the proteins we need to survive. And surrounding the whole shebang, holding it all together, is the cell membrane. It acts just like the cell security guard, controlling exactly which substances are allowed to enter and leave the cell.
But wait, we're missing one incredibly important structure in the animal cell. Our source material perfectly personifies this structure with a brilliant quote: "I'm the boss, I hold the DNA and tell the cell what to do." Can you guess which part of the cell is speaking there? It's the nucleus. The nucleus is the absolute control center because it holds your genetic material, your DNA. It holds the instruction manual for literally everything the cell is supposed to do. It truly is the boss of the eukaryotic cell. Section 3. Unique plant cell features, nature's superpowers. Now, what's really interesting about this is that while plant cells and animal cells are both eukaryotic, plants have evolved some absolutely astonishing unique features. They literally have superpowers that animal cells completely lack. Seeing them side by side, you can immediately spot a difference in shape. The plant cell is way more rigid and rectangular. But here's the secret to biology. A plant cell contains everything an animal cell has. It has the bossy nucleus, the energy-producing mitochondria, the cell membrane, the jelly-like cytoplasm, and the protein-making ribosomes. But on top of all of that, it has 3 extra structures that completely change the game. Let's see what those are.
The first 2 exclusive plant features are all about structural integrity.
See, because plants don't have skeletons like animals do, their cells have to step up and provide that support. First is the cell wall. This sits entirely outside the cell membrane. Our source notes it contains a substance called cellulose, which is made of these tough fibers that provide immense strength and support to the cell. Second is the large permanent vacuole. If you look at a plant cell diagram, this looks like a giant empty swimming pool taking up the entire center of the cell. But it's not empty, it contains a watery sap, and its main job is to keep the cell firm and turgid. Have you ever forgotten to water a houseplant and it gets all wilted? Yeah, that's because these vacuoles are drying up and shrinking.
And that brings us to the third plant-exclusive structure. And, honestly, arguably one of the most important structures on planet Earth, the chloroplast. This brilliantly illustrates exactly how plants feed themselves. The chloroplast is the site of photosynthesis. Inside these little structures is a green pigment called chlorophyll, which is exactly what gives plants their green color. This chlorophyll acts like a biological solar panel. It physically absorbs sunlight and allows the plant to synthesize its own food. Animal cells? We cannot do this. We have to go out and eat our food. Plants literally make their food out of thin air and sunshine, all thanks to the chloroplast.
Our lesson material sums up the identity of the plant cell beautifully with this fun little quote. I have a cell wall and chloroplasts. I love soaking up the sun. If you can remember that quote, you've pretty much mastered the major differences. A sturdy cell wall for support and solar-powered chloroplasts for food. It is such an elegant, self-sustaining microscopic system.
Section 4. Time for a pop quiz.
All right, let's see how much of that 30-second memory challenge in my explanations actually stuck. I'm going to read a question directly from our source material, and I want you to try and shout out the answer in your head before I reveal it. Okay, question number 1. What is the part of the cell that contains DNA called? Is it A, nucleus, B, cytoplasm, or C, mitochondria? Think back to our quote about who is the boss of the cell.
And the answer is A, nucleus. Remember, the nucleus is the control center. It holds the genetic material and dictates the cell's activities. If you got that, fantastic start. Let's keep the momentum going here.
Question number 2. What part of the cell controls substances moving in and out? Is it A, cell wall, B, nucleus, C, root hair, or D, cell membrane? Think about the security guard of a factory floor we talked about.
The correct answer is D, cell membrane. Remember, while the cell wall gives strength to a plant cell, it's the flexible cell membrane inside it, which remember is present in both plant and animal cells, that actually acts as the gateway, actively controlling what enters and exits.
All right, let's look at question number 3. Which of these cell components is not found in animal cells? A, nucleus, B, cell membrane, C, cytoplasm, or D, chloroplasts? Think about those superpowers we just discussed.
And the answer is D, chloroplasts. Animal cells have a nucleus, a membrane, and cytoplasm, but they absolutely do not have chloroplasts. We cannot absorb sunlight to perform photosynthesis, as much as we might enjoy lying on the beach.
Well, that brings us to the end of our microscopic safari for today's explainer. You've navigated the cytoplasm, powered through the mitochondria, and soaked up the sun with the chloroplasts. But before we go, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought. If human animal cells could somehow be genetically engineered to develop chloroplasts, if we suddenly had the plant's superpower to use chlorophyll, how would our entire daily need for food completely change? Imagine a world where simply taking a walk in the sun was literally your lunch. Keep questioning, keep exploring, and I'll see you in the next explainer. Class dismissed.